and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Just 5 months ago, there was a feeling of exhilaration in the oil industry over the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act. Industry players felt that a new lease of life had been given the sector, which would enable it play in the leagues of Petronas of Malaysia and Petrobras of Brazil. But the word out now is soon, but not yet. The federal government seemed to develop cold feet over clauses in the act, which requires the National Oil Company, the NNPC, to operate as a commercial for-profit company. These would have required that it ends years of subsidizing the cost of premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, currently captured as under-recoveries in the NNPC's budget in February this year. The consequence of this would be a rise in the price of the product, which will have an effect on the price of everything else directly or indirectly connected to it. Well, the Nigeria Labour Congress wasn't having any of it and was preparing for a showdown, but government backtracked, asking for an 18-month extension on fuel subsidies and an amendment to the Petroleum Industry Act. Tonight on Hard Copy, we speak with the president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Engineer Festus Osifo, about the consequences of a delay in the implementation of the PIA. Engineer Festus Osifo, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you so much, Maokwe. Good evening, Nigerians.
Well, it was just but 5 months ago we spoke with you about the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act. And I remember how excited you were about it. Now that it would seem the implementation seems to be suffering a setback, how are players in your industry reacting to this?
Yes, the implementation that actually have this level of setback is a subsidy removal. That is the full deregulation of the downstream of the oil and gas industry. But as I speak to you now, all other sections of the Act, it's already been implemented. As I speak to you, you could follow up that few weeks ago, the board of NNPC was inaugurated. That is the Nigerian National Petroleum Company. It's no longer a corporation, but now a company has registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. So as it is today, the implementation is in top gear. We have the upstream chief executive has been appointed. The mid and downstream chief executive has also been appointed. So in that regard, the implementation is in full gear. But the setback that came in is actually because of the subsidy that has not been removed. And there are a lot of reasons why this is actually so. There are a lot of reasons that the politicians are looking at that have made them backtrack on this.
What is the implication of that? Because for some people, they think that that's a real cog in the wheel of progress for the PIA. From what you know, what is the cost implication of that decision?
Yeah, certainly there is a cost implication to that. You know, before now, the downstream of the oil and gas industry has not actually developed when compared to the upstream. There's a particular IOC that in 2008, this particular IOC from their headquarters in Europe, they decided that if the downstream of the oil and gas industry is liberalized, if there is full deregulation in the downstream of the oil and gas industry, that they are going to build refinery in Nigeria. So that is one of the things that we have really faced by not having the balls to go ahead to do the full-scale deregulation of the downstream. So with this, we are still going to keep managing. With this, we are still going to continue the trend that we have been in the last decades, the trend of subsidizing the product and not attracting investment to this sector. If this sector has been liberalized in the last 20, 30 years, I can assure you that the private sectors would have come in to invest in the downstream. They could have come in building pipelines to distribute petroleum products. They could have come in as well in building refineries. But as it is today, nobody is going to put its money in an economy that is highly regulated, such as the downstream sector of the Nigeria oil and gas industry. So that is actually the major setback. But to Nigerians as well, Nigerians are quite happy because the better days are still here, because as it stands today, the PMS will still be subsidized, and all the attendant problem that may materialize as well when the subsidy is removed will still remain in place. So, so as it is today, I think by and large, Nigerians are happy that the evil days have been pushed forward to the next 18 months. So technically, I think the government is pushing the responsibility to the next government, because you and I know that in the next 18 months, this government will no longer be in place. So I think that is what they are literally doing. And if you look at the implication of this, the NNPC has submitted a budget of about 3 trillion naira to the National Assembly as a cost of subsidy. So we really need to examine this from all angles. This subsidy that we talk about today, the 3 trillion that we are using to subsidize, what and what could it have gone for? Again, the 3 trillion that we are pushing into it, what will be the effect? How are we going to fund it? Are we going to borrow again from the international community?
Let me interrupt you here. You say the Nigerians are happy that the evil day has been shifted, if I heard you right. If we know that the day that lies ahead is evil, why do you think the Nigerians will be happy that such a day has been shifted?
Yeah, Maukwe, I quite, as I am, I understand what the challenges are in the industry. Probably because of the fact that I'm a practitioner in the industry and I have background in petroleum engineering, petroleum economics, and business administration. So I could understand what the impact of the subsidy could be when it in the industry. But the Nigerians that are out there, they don't really understand all this. They don't understand. All they want to see is that let me buy PMS at a cheaper cost. Let me go to the fuel station, and at the end of the day, I buy PMS at a reduced price. So that is what they want to see. The man who is driving taxi, the commuters, they still want to pay the same money that they are paying. They are even looking for any opportunity where they could pay some reduced prices. So what Nigerians are looking at, the masses that are out there, they are being impoverished. The masses that are out there, they have been facing a lot of hard times, because of the rising inflation and all that. So for them, this is a respite. For them, they are happy that the burden has been shifted once more.
Let me take you up on the matter of everyday Nigerians, which you spoke to. Your union has always maintained that fuel subsidies need to go. That stance seems at variance with the stance of the NLC, which seems strongly opposed to the removal of subsidies. Have there been any engagement between your union and theirs?
Yes, as PENGASSAN, we actually belong to, we are affiliated to the Trade Union Congress. And the Trade Union Congress we were in the CWC and the NEC meeting of Trade Union Congress just about a week ago. And the resolution of the Trade Union Congress was that subsidy should go, but before subsidy is removed, we need to enhance local production. Before subsidy is removed, what are those palliatives that government must design? What are those things that government must put in place before you finally remove subsidy? But sometime in 2016, PENGASSAN as a trade union had a NEC in Calabar where we agreed unanimously that subsidy should be phased out, that subsidy should go. This was in May 2016. So ever since, this has been the position of PENGASSAN. But we also understand the implication that the implication of that decision. And that is why, over the years as well, we've also called on the Nigerian government that you are always asking Nigerians to understand. You are passing the buck to Nigerians, at times for good reasons. But as the leader, you must lead by example. Some conversations I was having a few days ago was that if today, for example, if the federal government comes out, as led by the president, to say we are in dire strait, to say we are facing financial difficulty as a country. That is well known, because today last year we used 75% of our revenue to service loan. This is payment of the interest on loans, not the principal. The principal has been reserved for future, for us to pay it tomorrow. But we are using 75% to actually pay to service our loans. So if the government comes out and says, this is the problem that we are facing, but as the leaders, we must lead by example. And if the government comes out and say, okay, National Assembly, what you have been earning in the last years is, you'll be having a budget of between 120 to 150 billion in the last years. We are cutting it down by 60%. Then executive will come out and they will cut down their earnings. When they do that, you are showing leadership by example. But you cannot be living in such affluence, and you are asking Nigerians as well to understand. And that is why it is difficult for the ordinary man in the street to understand what government is saying. And government as well is not communicating with the ordinary man. So in nutshell, TUC as a labor center has come up to say that, yes, we believe the subsidy should go, but these are the condition precedent that we want you to meet. Enhanced local refinery, which today I can also confirm to you that PENGASSAN and NUPEN, we sit in the steering committee of the refinery rehabilitation. And to a very large extent, we'll tell you that work is going on in the Port Harcourt refinery. They have completed the 3D and 4D laser scanning, and they are progressing. The contractor is on site. So work is actually progressing on that. And between now and the first quarter of next year, it is projected that the old Port Harcourt refinery, which is the 60,000 barrels capacity, will most likely come on stream.
So that's the stance of the TUC, which is very different from the stance of the NLC. I'm asking if there have been engagements with the NLC. Have there?
Yes. Yes. The stand of the NLC is not also that different. The stand of the NLC has been that they will only support the regulation when it is when you produce PMS domestically, that they will not support import-driven deregulation. So that has been the stand of the NLC. Yes, we've had some engagement.
From where you stand, how feasible is that?
Yes, it's actually feasible. It's actually feasible, Maokbe, because if you see today, like as I have said, work is going on in the Port Harcourt refinery. And once they finish the 60,000 barrel capacity, simultaneously they are also working on the bigger one. So in the next 1 or 2 years, we are going to have production from the Port Harcourt refinery. And remember as well that Dangote refinery is also being projected that before the end of the year, that the 650,000 barrels Dangote refinery will also come on stream. And when these come on stream, it will also go it will go a long way to also help in this regard. Because the Dangote refinery today is 650,000 barrels. And if you do rough calculation, 1 barrel gives about 42 gallons. But if you refine 1 barrel, you are going to get about 45 gallons of petroleum product. And if you multiply that by 650,000 barrels, that will give you about 3 million gallons of petroleum product. And 1 gallon is equal to 3.78 liters. So by the time you calculate all this, it will give you 110 million liters of petroleum product. And when you refine crude oil, 45% of a product that you will get is PMS. So by the time you calculate, you are going to get about 50 million liters of PMS. So the Dangote refinery will give us, if it produces up to 95% in stock capacity, about 50 million liters.
Okay.
But like as I have told you, Dangote is a private, let me quickly add it. Dangote is a private company. So Dangote is not going to sell PMS to Nigerians at a reduced cost. Because if you look at the entire West African suburb, Niger, for example, sell PMS at equivalent of 600 equivalent of 600 naira. If you go to Benin, equivalent of 400 naira.
So he certainly will go to where the market is attractive. That's basically what you're trying to say. What I would like to now ask you when we come back from this break is whether or not, looking ahead, there is still an evil day if you say that these are the measures being put in place to cushion the effects of the removal of fuel subsidy. That'll be when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Engineer Festus Osifo, President of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN, is our guest tonight. And we're talking about the consequences of the non-implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. Well, you have maintained that certain parts of the Petroleum Industry Act are being implemented. You've also told us that the price tag, I mean, we all know that now, the price tag for keeping subsidies is quite heavy. 3 trillion naira is what we're now asking for from the Nigerian National Assembly. Now, the figure has been disputed, and this has been disputed by no less than governors who believe that your union holds the key to true accountability. Is it a challenge that your union is willing to take on?
No, I think it's a bit deeper. It's a bit deeper than that. If you remember very well, during the era of former President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua and Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and former President Goodluck Jonathan, there was a lot of issues around the subsidy. You know, people that were not importing products, they will be claiming subsidy. And because of that scam that happened then the federal government now decided that only NNPC will start importing PMS. So they have been importing the PMS, but the problem that is actually there is that this PMS that they import, when they bring it in, they take crude oil out and they bring in PMS. So when they bring in this PMS, you have these big vessels that will bring the PMS to the high sea. Then the mother vessels will now go in there, and at the end of the day, they would do the bunkering. Then once the bunkering is done, they will now supply the PMS to the depot. Then the depot will now supply to the retailers. So this is where the problem is. The reason that we cannot actually account for the quantity of PMS that we consume today locally, it's because, number one, our borders are so porous. We have there are a lot of these PMS that come into Nigeria are being smuggled out. Like as I have said earlier, all our neighboring countries, the price of PMS is higher than what we sell locally in Nigeria. So you have natural arbitrage. So at the end of the day, these products are smuggled out. So this subsidy, at the end of the day, we actually pay subsidy for a lot of our neighboring countries.
So the question is, smuggled out by who? The people who say that PENGASSAN can help. I mean, the governors believe that PENGASSAN can help in determining how much we truly consume. Whoever it is that is smuggling out our products, they believe that they might have help somewhere, and there are people who are knowledgeable about how these things are happening. And I believe that they think that those in the petroleum industry will be better suited to helping us out with this mystery. Is this something that PENGASSAN will be willing to take on?
The governors are only trying to pass the buck. They are trying to shift their responsibility to a trade union. It is not the function of a trade union to determine the quantity of PMS that is being consumed. If you look at the industry today, how many across the depots, for example, yes, we have our members across the depot, but if you look at the entire value chain, we may not have our members across. If you look at the borders, where these products are being smuggled out of the country, does PENGASSAN have police? Does PENGASSAN have security agencies to man those borders? The answer clearly is a no.
So PENGASSAN might not have police and people at the borders, but the people who because we don't even know how these things are smuggled out, but people think that they live in trucks. There is PENGASSAN, there's also NUPENG. These are unions that people will say are in a good place to know those who are responsible for smuggling out this product. Is it a challenge that you're willing to, take a further look at?
No, that challenge, like as I've said earlier, they are just trying to pass the buck. They are just trying to shift the buck to us. It is their responsibility. It is the responsibility of government to man the borders. It's the responsibility of government and its agencies to put in place an efficient system. Before now, DPRO was trying to do something in that regard. Maokwe, to actually do this is not something that is a rocket science, but it may be cost intensive. It may be cost intensive to design a program that you could use in monitoring when PMS comes into Nigeria and how is being dispensed to the retailers. But PENGASSAN does not have such resources to go into that, and it is not the mandate of PENGASSAN at all to dabble into that at all. It's purely the responsibility of government, and they should not shy away from it.
But looking at how this is a sore point, this is now something that is coming to a national crisis point. We know where we are financially. We know the implications of removing subsidies. We know that it's going to take a while to get our refineries up and running. But we also know that, the price tag for fuel subsidies might not exactly be correct. 3 trillion naira is a lot of money. This is minus crude that is being stolen. This is minus PMS that is being bunkered illegally. This is minus illegal refining, etc. Some people ask, who is government, if not all of us? So that's what I'm asking. In terms of also the technical know-how, which I'm sure that some of your members are privy to, because the IOCs have also suffered losses, and maybe they're also fighting the problems with technology. Are they finding ways to engage with government and also the regulators to say, we think that we could be able to help in this regard? Some people will say that it should be the call of duty and the call of patriotism. You don't think so?
Yeah, Maokwe, the upstream companies, the IOCs are actually working in the upstream. So they are not really concerned with what happens in the downstream. Their is to bring the crude oil, then they take their portion, and Nigerian government take their portion. So what happened in the downstream is not actually the function of the IOCs. But having said that, today our greatest problem is because we don't have a database. If you ask the government today, how many keke napep do we have in the streets of Kano? They will not be able to tell you. But some studies putting it there that you may have up to 1 million keke napep in Kano alone. How many of these keke napep do we have, for example, in the streets of Lagos? So we don't have a database. So, and we have a body in Nigeria who is supposed to be licensing keke napep, licensing outside the tricycles. They are supposed to license cars and all that. So we should look at our database. How many cars do we have in the road? How many keke napep, in quotes, or we can call it tricycles, that do we have? Do we have on the road? So we need to do all these study. And PENGASSAN does not have such database. NUPENG does not have such database. Yes, we can only assist. When the government is ready and willing to do their work, then we can assist, because we have members who are experts, who have been working in PPPROA, the defunct PPPROA. We have members who have been working in the defunct PEF. So we have members who have been working in these agencies. We can assist. But for us to lead it, it is not our responsibility, and it needs enormous amount of resources to put some of these things in place.
I just heard you say when government is ready. Do you think that government is not ready?
Again, the will, we are not seeing the will really. We are not seeing the will. We are not seeing the readiness in the part of government. I have said before now that if you look at it, Today, I heard the Senate president saying that we actually we consume about 100 million liters per day, but I think that is not the average that NNPC is putting out there. The average that was even used in calculating the subsidy that will be required in 2022 was actually about 65 million liters per day. But this 65 million liters per day is what NNPC paid the subsidy for when they are importing the PMS. But the actual consumption is now a different ballgame. How much of this PMS are we actually consuming in Nigeria? I think that is where the focus should go into. And for us to be able to do that, all hands must be on deck. The government must take the lead, and they must have the will to actually do it. Then the trade unions, we are ready to support, but we cannot take the lead because we don't even have the resources to do that, and that is not also our mandate.
Well, let's leave it here. We have to thank you for coming on Hard Copy tonight.
Thank you so much, Maukwe. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Nigerians, for listening.
We're speaking with Engineer Festus Osifo, who is the president of PENGASSAN. Well, that's the program. It's pretty hard decisions before all of us. It's true that inflation could spiral out of control were we to remove petrol subsidies. But is it really worth a 3 trillion naira price tag? Please send your thoughts and questions to the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.